This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. You know what? This is the time. This is finally the year for the Browns to go all in. All in, all out. Now, I'm not going to say Super Bowl or bust because I hate how Super Bowl or bust gets used. Like, usually Super Bowl or bust gets used by people who just want to complain about the season no matter what happens, right? Like it just doesn't seem like it's an actual expectation that people interact with in a genuine way. It always seems like somebody's doing it to be disingenuous. Like, oh yeah, it's Super Bowl or bust for the Cleveland Browns. So like, even if the Browns get to like the AFC Championship game and they don't make the championship, the Super Bowl because missed the extra point or some BS like that, people could have a reason to say, well, it was a failure, right? So I don't like the term Super Bowl or bust. I found that term to be used in bad faith more often than not. But you look at this Browns roster and you just see a list of either Pro Bowl talents, people who have made the Pro Bowl, or future Pro Bowl talents, right? I'll go down the list just for the effect, because sometimes people talk about the Browns like they're not a talented team. You have Myles Garrett, who is probably going to end up being the most dominant edge rusher of his era. Going to change how the game is defended, change how the game is scouted. I mean, people talk about Myles Garrett in the same breath as LT. Tells you everything you need to know. Denzel Ward, one of the best corners in football, kind of underrated simply because Myles Garrett is on this team. So like, I think on any other team, we talk about Denzel Ward being the best player on their defense, but that's Myles. And it's Myles by such a margin that it kind of diminishes how we view Denzel Ward, but he's a hell of a corner himself, a shutdown. He one of like 3 people that can raise their hand and say, I shut down Jamar Chase. Who else can say that? Grant Delpit, who I feel like people are really sleeping on, was a really integral part to this Browns defense. And I think he's going to be an integral part to this Browns defense next year. And I thought he was a Pro Bowl level player throughout most of the season. I mean, just look at his run stops from the safety position. He's up there with a lot of linebackers. And if we want to talk about a guy who had a ton of run stops, a ton of TFLs, and had a average depth of tackle of less than 2 yards, I mean, JOK is your guy. This was a guy who was getting behind the line of scrimmage, stopping run plays, making play after play after play at that linebacker position. And look, there wasn't a lot of bright spots on that Texans wild card game, but boy, oh boy, JOK was shining bright as hell in that one. Like, we saw what the future could look like with him reaching his potential. And if he can do that on a consistent basis, the Browns might have one of the best defenses in the last 20 years. You got Martin Emerson, who's a shutdown corner, got robbed from the Pro Bowl, in my opinion. I think he's already a Pro Bowl talent, and one of the best young corners in the NFL, and one of the best young corners in that draft class that he went. You have David Njoku, who looks like a monster. Like, he looks like honestly, I didn't even think David Njoku was going to get to this point, right? Like, I was always kind of high on David, but I thought David would always be, a 50-50 ball, but he's a yak monster. I didn't predict that. He's one of the best blockers. I didn't predict that. David Njoku. Joe Bitonio, the old vet, all-pro Joe. We all know what it is. And then you have Wyatt Teller, another perennial all-pro guy, another guy on that offensive line that's dominated for years. And then you have DeJuan Jones, who is so damn good, I got to leave another all-pro guy off this list in Jack Conklin simply because he exists. And because DeJuan Jones exists, there's no room to talk about Jack Conklin because he ain't probably going to play. Think about that. How many guys can play so good their rookie year that they force the team into a tough decision with a all-pro? And I think Jack made the all-pro team like last year or something like that. Like, I don't even think it was that long ago. That's how good DeJuan Jones was. Amari Cooper, who's playing his best football of his career. I don't hear enough people talk about that. I don't hear enough people talk about how much better Amari Cooper is in Cleveland than he's been in Dallas. You know, it's interesting, right? Because if Amari Cooper had these numbers in Dallas, boy, oh boy, will we hear about how his numbers were down in Cleveland, how he needed a change of scenery. But when it works the other way, and Amari Cooper comes to Cleveland and starts playing the best football of his career, we don't hear much about that, right? Ain't that surprising? He had a career year last year in touchdowns, a career year this year in receiving yards. Yet I never hear about how Amari Cooper is clearly playing his best football as a Cleveland Brown. Because boy, oh boy, do we hear about it when somebody has their worst football as a Cleveland Brown. Amari Cooper, that guy. Nick Chubb. We know what Nick Chubb's reputation is, right? If he can get back to form, he's the best running back in football. Everybody else that competed with him either moved teams or is not in their prime anymore. And then you had Deshaun Watson, who at one point was a top quarterback in this league. He's trying to find a way to get back there. But to be honest with you, this Browns team's so loaded that they don't really need him to be top 5 in order to get to where they want to get to. They just need him to be a very, very good starting quarterback, which is to be in that like top 7 range, right? So at least in the AFC. Another thing to note, all of those players I just said, they're all under 30 outside of Joe Bitonio. So not only do you have a team that's ready to win, full of talent, you have a Myles Garrett who's reaching the peak of his powers. You have a Denzel Ward who should be reaching the peak of his powers, right? You have a J.O.K. who's starting to really figure out this NFL game. The same thing's true with Martin Emerson. You have David Njoku who's really going to get to the peak of his powers. Joe Bitonio, you hope that he can hang on and maintain. Wyatt Teller, he's somebody who's also in that 27 age range. DeJuan Jones, I mean, like, he ain't even figured it out yet. He's an NFL baby out there, so what a year in the offseason could do for him is spectacular. Amari Cooper in that same situation as Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. Nick Chubb coming back from an injury is going to be tough, but he should be in that spot. And theoretically, Deshaun Watson, like, if he could just stay healthy, this should be a good year for him. I'm not saying this team's perfect. They clearly have their problems, right? We got to see if Watson can stay healthy and play consistent football. We have not seen this man play more than 6 games in a row since becoming a Cleveland Brown. That's an obvious problem, right? They have issues. Nick Chubb's coming back off injury. Can you rely on that? Is the left tackle situation going to be stable? Because at times, Jed Wills made you question if that was a possibility. All of these things are true, right? Even Zadarius Smith leaving, right? You don't have Zadarius Smith. You might not be able to get him back. Is Obo Okoronkwo and Alex Wright going to be enough to hold down that other edge position and not really affect depth? Or are we going to be talking about that move being something that really hurt this Browns defense and why they can't reach the same peaks? They have issues like any other team in the NFL. And it's important to remember that all 32 teams have issues, right? I think we talk about the Browns situation and we point out different holes that they might have in a roster and we complain about those holes, but it's also important to remember that every roster is going to have a hole. It's impossible to build a holeless roster. But it's about where you're strong at and how strong you are at where you're strong at. So I'm thinking that this is the year to go all in. The Browns roster, about as good as you can hope for. You've drafted as well as you could hope for. You've hit on some free agent signings and some trades. You are at the point of this is going to be probably the best chance you have at this roster. So what can you do if you're Andrew Berry, if you're Kevin Stefanski, to tighten the screws, to get to that championship level where you can argue that they might have been there last year? Like, if they just have one less major injury, like if Nick Chubb or Deshaun Watson doesn't get hurt, they might have been in that conversation. Like, it's very likely. Look what they were doing when Deshaun Watson was in there. They had a plus 63 point differential. And then if Nick Chubb was healthy, I mean, like, you imagine that it gets even higher because you're able to control the ball more and punt less. they don't even need both of those guys to be healthy. They just needed one of those guys to be healthy for them to reach a different tier than what they were at the end of this season. But those guys coming back from injury, I mean, like, you could make the argument that they're there already. Now they have some room to make some moves, and they can tighten those screws even tighter. And I think if they make these 3 moves, or if they make one of these 3 moves, they will be the best roster in football. If the Browns get Christian Watson, not Christian Watson. We got Christian Watson. If the Browns get Christian Wilkins, they will be one of the best defenses in the NFL. That is it. Dalvin Tomlinson, Christian Wilkins, Myles Garrett. You can put Obo Okoronkwo at that other spot. You can put Alex Wright at that other spot. You can sign a vet just in case, which I would probably do. But you get Christian Wilkins. Yeah, that'd do it. Now, a lot of people wonder about the cap, and can the Browns do this with the current salary cap? They're going to restructure Deshaun Watson. That's going to open up about $30 million. They're going to open up about $60 million in salary cap space. If they sign Christian Wilkins, that's going to be a 3-year deal, more than likely. And since it's a 3-year deal, the money's a lot easier to hide. Not hide, but maneuver for the first couple of years, right? Because you can add void years, you can add restructures, all of this stuff to the contract. So yes, they could bring in Christian Wilkins at probably like $22, $25 million and find a way to manage it. But it will include, if you go after Christian Watkins, Christian Wilkins. I am having a horrible day at pronouncing names today. But if you do go after Christian Wilkins, what that does mean is that you are sacrificing some flexibility in probably like 2027. You're making a move to go all in. Similar to how the LA Rams made moves to go all in. And they won the Super Bowl the year they did that. But that is a conscious move to go all in, to say, hey, these 2 years, we're going to try to win a championship. And if we don't, we'll reset. But these 2 years, we're going to give it a go. This is our best shot. We've been loading up ammo. We've been saving stuff. We've been keeping stuff in the safe, all of this stuff, just to make sure that when it's time to take the shot, we can take it. This is the time. And Christian Wilkins is the shot. If you get him, your defense was already dominant last year. They will become even more dominant. They will become even more difficult to stop. And just because you had that defense, you were able to win 11 games with 4 different quarterbacks. Think about if you have that defense and then you get Deshaun Watson to play at a higher level. You don't even need Deshaun Watson, honestly, to play better than he did last year to win like the division. But like if Ken Dorsey and his offense gets him to a point where he's comfortable and playing great football again, and you have that defense, you might be the 1 seed. That's an all-in move, and that's a move that'll get you there. So that move would do it. If you pair a Christian Watkins move with like a Wilkins move with a Mike Williams signing and maybe a backup running back, you're all in. These next 2 years are all you're going to be trying to go for. You'll reset after that, but it will be something we're not used to, right? The Browns have made some pushes to get better and to get to a championship caliber over the last few years. But now they're at that point where they're at that tipping point where it's like, hey, all that stuff, all that rollover we've been saving, this might be the time to let all the guns out the cannon and go for it for the next couple of years. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.